Alrighty guys, this is Genesis 12:1 all the way to the end of chapter 17 of Genesis. So we're going to be going from Abram turning into Abraham, Sarai becoming Sarah, and this birthing of both Ishmael and Isaac, which gets controversial. So strap in, this will be very, very confusing. The Lord had said to Abram, "Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse, and all peoples on earth will be blessed by you." You're right now. There's a lot of talk about egocentrism around the Jews of the world and how we control everything along those lines. And I think a lot of the motivation for that does come from lines like this. Both inside the Jewish community, some of them do think that they kind of have the right to. And then a lot outside will use this against the Jewish community as saying, hey, look, this is their book. Look what they're saying about it. Almost every religious text I can think about gives their people kind of the blessing of their God behind them. It is sort of how humans have to approach the seeming nihilism of God's realm, is that we have to have our religions tell ourselves that God is on our side, that God is in there picking a side. And I think the reality is there are natural consequences which are better for civilization than others. And I think there are some cultures that then lead to more, I don't know, what I would say, it works well with God's realm better than others do. A lot of ones that help take us forward scientifically, I think nowadays would be amongst the better cultured ones, because it gives you the viewpoint of you're in a universe you interact with. You get to interact with God's realm and try to figure out how God works to some degree, or at least attempt to. And whenever a culture is going in that thought process, it ends up being a much more fruitful endeavor for humanity, rather than how a lot of the other cultures end up being more destructive. But nevertheless, this does not mean that Jews are better than everyone else. This means eventually that there is a burden put upon Jews to have the responsibility of trying to make the world a better place. But we'll come back to that part later. So Abram went as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he set out from Haran. He and his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, all the possessions they had accumulated, and the people they had acquired in Haran. Interesting. And the people they had acquired, slaves. Oh, I wonder if that means slaves. All the possessions they had accumulated and the people they had acquired. Acquired could be like maybe friends they have. It could also be meaning by acquired people that you bought people, which slavery does exist back then and always had until 200 or so years ago. And they set out for the land of Canaan, and they arrived there. Abram traveled through the land as far as the site of the great tree of Moreh at Shechem. At that time the Canaanites were in the land. The Lord appeared to Abram and said to your offspring, I will give this land. So he built an altar there to the Lord who had appeared to him. Okay. From there he went on toward the hills east of Bethel and pitched his tent, with Bethel on the west and Ai, interesting, and Ai on the east. There he built an altar to the Lord and called on the name of the Lord. Then Abram set out and continued towards the Negev. Let's see, is there any wisdom to glean out of this? I imagine there's a ton I'm missing here. So God is going to do this kind of stunt a lot in the Old Testament. The Lord appearing to people. That is going to be obviously widely open to interpretation of what that means. What does it mean for God to appear before anyone who God is going to appear before? Does that mean that the people have realized something about God's realm, about their interactivity with the universe, and that is, in essence, God speaking to them? That the world, in a way, is given Abram the wisdom to realize, I'm going to settle down in this land right here? Or is it just a divine justification for taking over land? Heck of a question, but this idea of God appearing to people is going to come up with a lot, and I want to broaden the understanding of what that can mean. Because I think with a lot of people nowadays, they think of a Zeus type figure coming down on the clouds and talking to someone on the ground, and I don't think that's what they're going for. I think their interpretations, they don't require thinking about Zeus. All right, Abram in Egypt. Now there was a famine in the land, and Abram went down to Egypt to live there for a while because the famine was severe. As he was about to enter Egypt, he said to his wife Sarai, "I know what a beautiful woman you are. When the Egyptians see you, they will say, 'This is his wife.' Then they will kill me because I will let you live." You wonder why. "Say you are my sister, so that I will be treated well for your sake. Oh, and my life will be spared because of you." So the assumption is as soon as they get to Egypt, the locals are going to kidnap Sarai, do what barbaric people do to women, and instead of Abram getting killed before, they figure if they think it's Sarai's brother, they don't want to upset her by killing her brother, which doesn't make her a great victim for other things. So great, isn't this all pleasant? By the way, the Old Testament, very unpleasant as far as human nature goes, and probably realistic as far as human nature goes. I think we've seen enough ugliness in war and human rights violations to see how ugly humans get. We're just very, very separated from 21st century America. You get rid of that veneer of civilization that we're in, this is what we're left with. So the Old Testament doesn't kid around. When Abram came to Egypt, the Egyptians saw that Sarai was a very beautiful woman, and when Pharaoh's officials saw her, they praised her to Pharaoh. And she was taken into his palace, so Pharaoh has kidnapped Sarai. Okay. He treated Abram well for her sake. Okay, you don't want a crying woman. And Abram acquired sheep and cattle, male and female donkeys, male and female servants, and camels. So since they spared Abram's got nothing better to do while Pharaoh gets his wife, and so he's going to be productive and acquire cattle. But the Lord inflicted serious diseases on Pharaoh and his household because of Abram's wife Sarai. Interesting. In which way? Like punishing Sarai or punishing Pharaoh? I'm guessing punishing Pharaoh, but in causation for his evil deeds. Of course, they have no explanation for diseases back then. Serious diseases on Pharaoh and his household. So it's specific to Pharaoh. It's not all that Egypt gets plagued, maybe. But at least his household. So his family gets sick, and they're going to blame being with Sarai, with Pharaoh having kidnapped her. Alright, so Pharaoh summoned Abram. "What have you done to me?" he said. "Why didn't you tell me she was your wife?" Oh, so he finds out. "Why didn't you tell me she was your wife? Why did you say she is my sister so that I took her to be my wife? Now then, here is your wife, take her and go." Then Pharaoh gave orders about Abram to his men, and they sent him on his way with his wife and everything he had. So Sarai tells Pharaoh, presumably, that Abram's her husband. Well, it worked out for Abram. His gut instinct was correct. He survived and got away with everything he'd accumulated, while pimping out his wife to the Pharaoh to survive. Not intentionally, just to stay alive. It worked out in his interest, which I guess is kind of when you would say God is watching over you. But yikes. Alright, well, let's see how this goes. Alright, so Abram went up from Egypt to the Negev with his wife and everything he had, and Lot went with him. Abram had been very wealthy in livestock and in silver and gold, so he accumulated a lot of wealth doing all his cattle and everything else while Sarah was with Pharaoh. From the Negev he went from place to place until he came to Bethel, to the place between Bethel and Ai, where his tent had been earlier, and where he had first built an altar. There Abram called on the name of the Lord. So he's wondering, where the heck am I going to go? I'm trying to find some land hoping I'd find to settle in well. Now Lot, who was moving about with Abram, also had flocks and herds and tents, but the land could not support them while they stayed together, for their possessions were so great that they were not able to stay together. So they had too many cattle, and they grazed through the land too quickly, so they had to spread out more. And quarreling arose between Abram's herders and Lot's. Okay. So two farms are now in a quarrel. The Canaanites and Perizzites were also living in the land at the time. So Abram said to Lot, "Let's not have any quarreling between you and me, or between your herders and mine, for we are close relatives. Is not the whole land before you? Let's part company. If you go to the left, I'll go to the right. If you go to the right, I'll go to the left." Lot looked around and saw that the whole plain of the Jordan towards Zoar was well watered, like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt. This was before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. Footnote. So Lot chose for himself the whole plain of the Jordan and set out toward the east. The two men parted company. Abram lived in the land of Canaan, while Lot lived amongst the cities of the plain and pitched his tents near Sodom. Now the people of Sodom were wicked and were sinning greatly against the Lord. But does this mean we're about to move into the story of Sodom and Lot picked the wrong direction to go? We'll find out. Unfortunately, one of them ended up in Vegas. The Lord said to Abram after Lot had parted from him, "Look around from where you are, to the north and south, to the east and west. All the land that you see I will give to you and your offspring forever. I will make your offspring like the dust of the earth, so that if anyone could count the dust, then your offspring could be counted. Go, walk through the length and breadth of the land, for I am giving it to you." Okay, so go, Abram, I'm going to give you everything you want. I assume I will make your offspring like the dust of the earth, just meaning you'll have so many offspring to live on this land. This land will be infinitely fertile, you'll be able to live here forever, and all your descendants will be in massive numbers because how fruitful the land is. And I'm giving it to you. So Abram went to live near the great trees of Mamre at Hebron, where he pitched his tents. There he built an altar to the Lord. Alright, Genesis 14. Abram rescues Lot. At the time when Amraphel was king of Shinar, Atrioch king of Elazar, Kedorlaomer, here's me calling out to God, hell, king of Elam, entitled king of Goyim, title king of the Goyim, interesting. These kings went to war against Bera, king of Sodom, Bersha, king of Gomorrah, Shinab, king of Admah, Shemeber, king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, that is, Zoar. All these latter kings joined forces in the valley of Siddim, that is, the Dead Sea Valley. For 12 years they had been subject to Kedorlaomer, but in the 13th year they rebelled. Of Elam. Let's see, I'm curious if eventually, for 12 years they had been subject to Kedorlaomer, so he's the group leader for this first half of this war. Where is Elam, we think? Let's see. Where is Elam? Is that spelled right? Yes. Elam was an ancient civilization. Oh wow, it is modern day Iran. Oh my goodness. Okay, well, for all those freaking out that the Bible's repeating itself right now, here we go. Let's see, it's a show. Let's see, it was one of the oldest civilizations. 3rd millennia, so 3000 BCE version of Iran. Distinct language, Sumerians and Akkadians, the Elamite. I should read your Proverbs. What's what? Wow, so, okay, so For 12 years they've been subject to Kedolamar, which I just found out Elam is modern day Iran, but different culture, but same land. But after the 13th year they rebel, so it's going to be like the Sunnis versus the Shia today. Similar kind of alliance situation. Interesting how that works. Okay, right here. In the 14th year, Kedolamar and the kings allied with him went out and defeated the Rephaites in Ashtaroth Karnaim, the Zuzites in Cham, and Emites in Shaveh Kiriathaim, and the Horites in the hill country of Zair, as far as Edapara near the desert. Then they turned back and went to En Mishpat, that is Kadesh, and they conquered the whole territory of the Amalekites, Amalekites, as well as the Amorites who were living in Hazazon Tamar. So the king of what I thought was around the Emites, because right here it says, same guy, right? Yeah, so king of Elam, but then he's, oh wait, that's Elam, this is Emites. So it's different group. Okay, never mind. Then the king of Sodom, the king of Gomorrah, the king of Admah, the king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, that is Zoar, marched out and drew up their battle lines in the valley of Siddim against Kedorlaomer, king of Elam, Tidal, king of Goim, Emphrael, king of Shinar, and Ariah, king of Eleazar. 4 kings against 5. Alright, so the Middle East is up to a great start here. Now the valley of Siddim was full of tar pits, and when the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, some of the men fell into them, and the rest fled to the hills. The 4 kings seized all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah and all their food, and then they went away. They also carried off Abram's nephew Lot and his possessions, since he was living in Sodom. Okay, here's where the story actually gets relevant to us, because they've now kidnapped Abram's nephew Lot. Okay. A man who had escaped came and reported this to Abram the Hebrew. Now Abram was living near the great trees of Mamre the Amorite, a brother of Eshcol and Aner, all of whom were allied with Abram. When Abram heard that his relative had been taken captive, he called out of the 318 trained men born in his household and went in pursuit as far as Dan. During the night, Abram divided his men to attack them, and he routed them, pursuing them as far as Haba, north of Damascus. Okay, we know Damascus. He recovered all the goods and brought back his relative Lot and his possessions together with the women and the other people. So, interesting. Abram's got strong enough force that he is going to now have a special ops unit that rebels against the winners in this Arab war, it looks like, and go in there and steal back Lot and all of Lot's stuff. After Abram returned from defeating Kedorlaomer and the kings allied with him, the king of Sodom came out to meet him in the valley of Shaveh, that is, the king's valley. Then Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was priest of God Most High, and he blessed Abram, saying, Blessed be Abram by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, and praise be to God Most High, who delivers your enemies into your hands. Then Abram gave him 1/10 of everything. The king of Sodom said to Abram, Give me the people and keep the goods for yourself. Abram said to the king of Sodom with the raised hand that I have sworn an oath to the Lord, God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, that I will accept nothing belonging to you, and not even a thread or the strap of a sandal, so that you will never be able to say, I made Abram rich. I will accept nothing but what my men have eaten, and the share that belongs to the men who went with me, to Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre. Let them have their share. One interesting thing here is give me the people and keep the goods for yourself, and Abram's saying no to it. Abram's unwilling to give up the culture of his people. If he gives away his people to be slaves under the king of Sodom, then the culture that Abram's beginning to build will dissipate. It will go away. And that's far more important to him than the cattle and other goods that he's built up at this point. Which is always true. That people are much more important than things. Genesis 15, the Lord's covenant with Abram. After this, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision. So this might be the biblical version of an epiphany, of realizing something true to be about the universe around you. Might be when the word of the Lord comes to you. Do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield, your very great reward. But Abram said, Sovereign Lord, what can you give me, since I remain childless, and the one who will inherit my estate is Eliezer of Damascus? And Abram said, You have given me no children, so a servant in my household will be my heir. So a servant in my household will be my heir. I guess pig chews. Then the word of the Lord came to him, This man will not be your heir, but a son who is of your own flesh and blood will be your heir. He took him outside and said, Look up at the sky and count the stars. If indeed you can count them, then he said to him, So shall your offspring be. So shall your offspring be. Able to count them? If you can count them, then you'll have many offspring, as many as stars in the sky. Abram believed the Lord, and he credited it to him as righteousness. He also said, so righteousness is now akin to being fruitful. Yeah, okay. As God wishes. That seems to be the main purpose in life. He also said to him, I am the Lord who brought you out of the Chaldeans to give you this land to take possession of it. But Abram said, Sovereign Lord, how can I know that I will gain possession of it? So the Lord said to him, Bring me a heifer, which is, I think, some animal. Let's find out. Let's see. What is a heifer? Heifer is a young female bovine. Okay, a cow. Okay. Alright. Bovine's a cow. Or a heifer is a cow. And the Lord said to him, Bring me a female cow, a goat, and a ram, each 3 years old, along with a dove and a young pigeon. Interesting. Abram brought him all of these to him, cut them in two, and arranged the halves opposite of each other. Great. The birds, however, did not cut in half. Then the birds of prey came down on the carcasses, but Adam drove them away. So this is being a very weird animal sacrifice ritual, which is very popular back in the day. And this is humorously God's realm intervening and making it a pain for serving God. As the sun was setting, I don't know, I'm going back to this. I'm trying to think if there's any weird things to glean out of this, of the birds not cutting in half. As the sun was setting, Abram fell into a deep sleep, and a thick and dreadful darkness came over him. Then the Lord said to him, Know for certain that for 400 years your descendants will be strangers in a country not their own, and that they will be enslaved and mistreated there. But I will punish the nation they serve as slaves, and afterward they will come out with great possessions. You, however, will go to your ancestors in peace and be buried at a good old age. In the fourth generation, your descendants will come back here, for the sin of the Amorites has not yet reached its full measure. Yikes. This is very professorial, already acting like we know about the eventual slavery in Egypt that Moses will bring the Jews out of. This is acting as if it's written after the fact. And sin of the Amorites, what does that mean? What is the sin of the Amorites? Did I spell that right? No, one M. Sin the Amorite for the does. You suggest that the Amorites, one of the Canaanite peoples, were engaged in wicked, sinful behavior. God's judgment will come when their wrongdoing reaches a certain level. So the Amorites are on a bad course in sin, and they're only going to get worse. And then God will smite them of some sort. Interesting. The phrase used to explain that the Israelites' possession of the promised land is not due to their own righteousness, but in part as a response to the sinful behavior of the surrounding areas. Amorites and the Canaanites particularly. When the sun, let's keep moving for now. When the sun had set and darkness had fallen, a smoking firepot with a blazing torch appeared and passed between the pieces. Let's assume for food of the blazing torch. I'm not sure what the blazing torch means, other than helping with the darkness. Appear and pass between the pieces. On that day the Lord made a covenant with Abram and said, To your descendants I will I give this land, from the Wadi of Egypt to the great river, the Euphrates, the land of the Kenites, Kenizzites, Cadmonites, Hittites, Perizzites, Rephaites, Amorites, Canaanites, Girgashites, and Jebusites. Genesis 16, Hagar and Ishmael. Now Sarai, Abram's wife, had borne him no children, but she had an Egyptian slave named Hagar. So she said to Abram, "The Lord has kept me from having children, so go sleep with my slave. Perhaps I can build a family through her." Alright, so Sarai says to Abram, "Go sleep with the slave so we can have kids." I'll just pretend that I'm the mom. Abram agreed to what Sarai said, so after Abram had been living in Canaan 10 years, Sarai, his wife, took her Egyptian slave Hagar, and gave her to her husband to be his wife. He slept with Hagar and she conceived. Interesting. So are they, I guess you can have multiple wives. Interesting there. They had to be married instead of just a concubine. When she knew she was pregnant, she began to despise her mistress. Yeah. Then Sarai said to Abram, "You are responsible for the wrong I am suffering. I put my slave in your arms, and now that she knows she is pregnant, she despises me." "Your slave is in your hands," Abram said. "Do with her whatever you think best." Then Sarai mistreated Hagar, so she fled from her. So, probably the beginnings of explaining why monogamy is a good idea. Even with your wife's permission to have kids with a second woman, jealousy's still going to be in root at the heart of all human beings, and it creates chaos and trouble. Hence why monogamy is the way to go. But it's going to take a lot of mistakes to figure that out. The angel of the Lord found Hagar near a spring in the desert. It was the spring that is beside the road to Shur, and he said, "Hagar, slave of Sarai, where have you come from and where are you going?" Interesting. So now we have Hagar talking to God. The angel of the Lord. So an angel. Interesting. It's different. An angel this time instead of the Lord. Not much to extrapolate. The angel stuff's going to get weird, and I'm not sure how to feel about it. "I'm running away from my mistress Sarai," she answered. "Oh, mistress. Okay, so I have it backwards. So the mistress, Hagar calls her mistress Sarai, which means when she knew she was pregnant, she began to despise her mistress. So Hagar hates Sarah, or Sarai at the time. Sarai said, "Abraham, you're responsible for the wrong I am suffering," because Sarai is now the victim. Okay. "I put my slave in your arms, and now she knows she's pregnant. She despises me. May the Lord judge between you and me." Okay. So Sarai's mad at Abram because now Sarai's slave hates her and thinks she's the rightful heir to the child, which biologically makes sense. But being a slave changes the situation social class-wise, and obviously doesn't matter in God's realm. Slavery is sort of a man's realm issue, and having kids is not. So you end up in trouble whenever you mix the two in a negative way, which is what this is trying to say. Then the angel of the Lord told her, "Go back to your mistress and submit to her." The angel added, "I will increase your descendants so much that they will be too numerous to count." The angel of the Lord also said to her, "You are now pregnant, and you will give birth to a son. You shall name him Ishmael." Ishmael means God hears. "For the Lord has heard of your misery. He will be a wild donkey of a man. His hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand against him, and he will live in hostility toward all of his brothers." She gave this name to the Lord who spoke to her. "You are the God who sees me," for she said, "I have now seen the one who sees me." That is why the well was called Be'er Lahai-Roi. It is still there between Kadesh and Bered. So Hagar bore Abram a son, and Abram gave the name Ishmael to the son she had born. Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bore him Ishmael. The angel of the Lord is telling Hagar that for your suffering you will be given many, many descendants, and he's not going to be a decent person. And then this part is odd to me. She gave this name to the Lord who spoke to her. What name? Let's see. "You are the God who sees me," for she said, I'm not sure what to make of I don't know. That's interesting. I don't know if that's Hagar accepting the same God as the God of Abram. Given that one here is capitalized, it's inferring it's the same God. 17, almost there. We'll see if Ishmael comes back and how that story goes. I know Isaac's going to be coming up soon, though. Covenant of circumcision. When Abram was 99 years old, the Lord appeared to him and said, I am God Almighty. Walk before me faithfully and be blameless. Then I will make my covenant between me and you and will greatly increase your numbers. Abram fell face down, and God said to him, As for me, this is my covenant with you. You will be the father of many nations. No longer will you be called Abram, you will be your name will be Abraham. Abram means exalted father. Abraham, it means father of many. So that's what the change is about. For I have made you a father of many nations. I will make you for I have made you a father. Past tense. I will make you very fruitful. I will make nations of you, and kings will come from you. I will establish my covenant as an everlasting covenant between me and you and your descendants after you for generations to come, to be your God and the God of your descendants after you. The whole land of Canaan, where you now reside as a foreigner, I will give as an everlasting possession to you and your descendants after you, and I will be their God. Then God said to Abraham, As for you, you must keep my covenant, you and your descendants after you for the generations to come. This is my covenant with you and your descendants after you, the covenant you are to keep. Every male among you shall be circumcised. You are to undergo circumcision, and it will be the sign of the covenant between me and you. For the generations to come, every male among you who is 8 days old must be circumcised, including those born in your household or bought with money from a foreigner. Those bought with money from a foreigner, those who are not your offspring. So even if you adopt them, they will be circumcised. So there's an argument against the ethnic component of Judaism. It is not about the ethnicity. Even if you're quote-unquote adopted and you're not ethnically Jewish, you are still able to convert into the covenant with God via circumcision and other factors as well. Whether born in your household or bought with your money, they must be circumcised. My covenant in your flesh is to be an everlasting covenant. Any uncircumcised male who has not been circumcised in the flesh will be cut off from his people. He has broken my covenant. So by effect of just not being circumcised, you're not part of the game. You're not part of the group. Even though really the culture and the ethics as far as reflecting what God's wanting here should be up here, God doesn't think so. At least people don't think so at this time. God also said to Abraham, As for Sarai, your wife, you are no longer to call her Sarai. Her name will be Sarah. I will bless her and will surely give you a son by her. I will bless her so that she will be the mother of nations. Kings of peoples will come from her. Abraham fell face down. He laughed and said to himself, Will a son be born to a man 100 years old? Hasn't been an issue yet. Will Sarah bear a child at the age of 90? And Abraham said to God, If only Ishmael might live under your blessing. Abraham has pity and empathy for Ishmael, despite Hagar taking him off seemingly to a different area. But he longs for Ishmael to also have preferential treatment from God. It pains him that his other son, his first son, more or less has been cursed. Which shows you the nature of Abraham. Not good or bad, just interesting. Then God said, Yes, but your wife Sarah will bear you a son, and you will call him Isaac, Yitzhak. I'm curious here, isn't it? He laughs. Isaac means he laughs. Interesting. I will establish my covenant with him as an everlasting covenant for his descendants after him. And as for Ishmael, I have heard you. I will surely bless him. Okay, so God's going to go back and actually bless him. He's going to bless him. I will make him fruitful and will greatly increase his numbers. I'm not going to change his nature yet. He will be the father of 12 rulers, and I will make him into a great nation. But my covenant I will establish with Isaac, whom Sarah will bear to you by this time next year. When he had finished speaking with Abraham, God went up from him. Ah, interesting. God's literally just vanishing up in the sky. So we're doing a lot of anthropomorphic forms of God actions here. On that very day, Abraham took his son Ishmael. Okay, so he does have contact with Ishmael still. Okay. On that very day, Abraham took his son Ishmael and all those born in his household, or bought with his money every male in his household and circumcised them, as God told him. It's a scary night. Abraham was 99 years old when he was circumcised, and his son Ishmael was 13. Interesting. Abraham and his son Ishmael were both circumcised on that very day, and every male in Abraham's household, including those born in his household or bought from a foreigner, was circumcised with him. Okay. So here's an interesting idea. Having a physical representation on the body to represent a deal with God, that you're going to be responsible for enacting and forwarding God's laws, God's commandments, whatever he's going to pass down to come. By today's standards, it shouldn't really affect anything. But in Judaism, there are a lot of visual reminders to act as mental connections to what you're supposed to be thinking about. So in Judaism, if you wear a yarmulke or a kippah, the idea of like God looking down on you is supposed to kind of go with that idea and remind you that God's watching you, and so you should behave because God's watching you at all times. That's really what the yarmulke is kind of representing, to be on top of the head. Between the mezuzah, tefillin, tzitzit, there are a bunch of different symbols that are obvious, noticeable objects on your clothing or things you wear, like clothes, obviously, to remind you to think certain things, to behave certain ways. And in that sense, circumcision is similar, sort of, except instead of being a piece of clothing, it's actually a modification to your skin. Interestingly, Judaism is going to ban all other forms of skin modifications. No tattoos, no piercings. And we can go over why later when we come across that rule. But it is going to allow this one. In fact, it's going to be the one that starts this one, to set the Jews at this time apart from everyone else. They'll have a physical trademark to remind them that they are in a covenant with God, that they're supposed to be doing certain things in that covenant. Nowadays, it is so widespread, it has lost any meaning. It's just kind of the social norm, at least in the United States right now. A lot of people are against it. Jews obviously have an instinctual connection in favor of it, just because we equate it with being Jewish. And I've always thought of it as being a physical representation of the separation from the rest of the animal kingdom. Anyone who's ever had a male dog, a pet dog, obviously sees that the penis of that dog looks different, non-circumcised. That's kind of how it's supposed to normally be with penises. But with mankind, we're supposed to kind of separate ourselves out from the animals. We're already that way up here, so we have a physical manifestation of it. It's kind of what circumcision means to me, but also in that case, it's supposed to also affect up here, where you're supposed to remember that you're enacting commandments that will come later. And that's what the covenant's really all about. That you will take care of this land given by God, which today is modern day Israel. So you can see why Israel is so important to Jews. All right. Well, that should cover for this one. We'll see what happens next. I believe next one will be exciting, talking about sacrifice and Abraham trying to sacrifice his good son, Isaac. We'll see how that goes. Until then, see you guys later. Bye.